All right, friends, it is 2 o'clock, and I'm going to do a quick microphone check before I get started to make sure that everything is working. And so if you are here, please let us know where you are from, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Oh, all right. Looks like it's on. All right, I hear my microphone, so it is working. So let's get started. Welcome for those of you who are new. My name's Yvonne, and this is the Jelly Roll Club. The Jelly Roll Club started out kind of as a group of friends who started getting together to try to figure out what we were going to do with all of our Jelly Roll strips. And it evolved from like a local meeting group to an actual class that ran the first Saturday of the month, and now we are online and we still have a lot of Jelly Roll friends, and so that's what we're doing today. We are going to do another project that uses only Jelly Roll strips. So if you look behind me, you can see what we're working on today. So welcome. Let's see, who do we have out there? We have Sue and Betty and Jean and Sylvia. We have people from all over the place, so welcome to the Jelly Roll Club. This is a club where we make things, a lot of things, using Jelly Roll strips. And so if you have been to the website, it's www.jellyrollclub. You can see a lot of other projects that we've done. So if you want to catch up with any of our old projects, jump in. I leave those on the website after the lives are over. Okay, so let's get started. So, hello everybody, I'm glad you can hear me. We've got people from all over the place, from the UK, from Tennessee, Illinois, Texas, California, Oklahoma, all over the place. So welcome, welcome. All right, so let's get started. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the project cutting guide. So if you've gone to the website, you know that it's there. But if you have not, I'm going to go ahead and switch my camera view so that you can see the cutting guide. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the cutting guide number 1. So the cutting guide number 1 is what you're going to do with your 36 Jelly Roll strips. And this is for a quilt that measures 60 by 80. So you're going to take all 36 of those Jelly Roll strips and you're going to cut them as follows. You're going to cut 4 squares that are 2.5 by 2.5 inches. You're going to cut 4 little squares that are 1.5 inches, and then you're going to cut 4 rectangles that are 2.5 inches by 5.5. If you are making this out of scraps, as long as you have 10 inches of each piece that you want to incorporate into this quilt, you can certainly use leftover strips. All right, so let's talk about the background now. So if you are making the 60 by 80 quilt, you're going to need 144 rectangles that are cut 3.5 inches by 2.5 inches. So again, leftover Jelly Roll strips that are light colored. And then you need 144 squares that are 2.5 inches, so 2.5 inch squares, right? And so let me switch to my 2 cameras so that you can see. I'll move my mouse. And let me show you what that looks like. So from every Jelly Roll, you're going to cut 4 squares that are 2.5 inches, like this. So I have 4. And so there's 4 of them here. You're going to cut 4 little squares that are 1.5 inches. And you're going to cut 4 rectangles that are 5.5 inches long. So this is what you cut from every Jelly Roll. So whether you make a queen or a king or the one that we're making, which is a very large lap, mine is going to be a quilt of valor. So I wanted to make sure that it was the minimum size I needed for that. So I'm making mine 60 by 80. This is what you're going to cut from every single Jelly Roll strip. Then from all of the background, you're going to cut it into 2 sizes, which is 144 3.5 inch rectangles, and you're going to need 144 2.5 inch squares. And so this is it. This is all the cutting. It goes really, really fast. And so let's get started. Let me show you how to put this together. Okay, let me move my camera. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to lay these out in the way that we're going to sew them. So the first thing that I do is I start with my long rectangles, and I'm going to lay them all out in front of me. And it's important that you do one unit at a time, one jelly roll strip at a time, and you'll see why in just a second. So you lay them all out, and you're going to put all of your squares. This is a tone on tone, so I want that print side down, so the pretty sides are touching, pretty side to pretty side, and I'm going to lay those down on top of the top edge of these strips. So that's the first thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to take all of these, I'm going to lay them down, and then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to mark these. And the marking is important. Normally, I just kind of eyeball my easy corners, and these are what are called easy corners, but in this case, I actually marked them. And so I just use an itty bitty ruler that I have that's like 1 inch by 6 inches. And using my ultra fine mechanical pencil, I just use a regular pencil, nothing fancy. I'm going to take and I'm going to draw a thin line going down 2 sides and up 2 sides. From corner to corner, I'm going down 2 of these and up the other 2. You're probably wondering why this quilt is called the Ring of Fire. But if you notice, the quilt behind me when I first came on has a bunch of rings, right? And I had a jelly roll that was only warm colors. So it was all reds, oranges, yellows. And so when I laid it on the table, it literally looked like a ring of fire when I pulled it out. Of course, I'm a Johnny Cash fan, so if you love old country music, Ring of Fire is one of my favorite songs. Okay, so if you can see now, I have lines going this way and lines going the other way. So 2 sets, one going up and one going the opposite direction. And once I do that, I'm going to sew 1/4 of an inch. Not using 1/4 of an inch, excuse me. I'm going to sew just to 1 hair to the outside of that line. And let me switch my camera view so you can see what I'm talking about. So when I am sewing my easy corners, I will sew, if you notice where my pressing foot is located, my pressing foot is lined up using my seam tape, and then my needle is going to start just 1 thread to the right or to the outside of that drawn line. And let me explain why. When I sew directly on that line, what happens is a tiny bit of fabric is lost in that corner. So if I want that easy corner to be extremely accurate, I'm going to sew just a thread to the outside of that. That way when I press these, I will end up with blocks that are extremely accurate. And so if you've ever done a quilt that has a lot of those, you see my drawn line, I stitch just to the right of that, and then I press it with this still attached because it reduces the stretch, and then I just lay this so that it touches the corner, and then I come in with my iron and I lay it down and I push. The reason I do that is because that gives me the most accurate easy corner. And it also prevents distortion. So if you notice, this is not distorted in any way, shape, or form. And so once I have that, I can go ahead and take my scissors and I will cut 1/4 of an inch away from that edge. So I will roll this back and I will just cut 1/4 of an inch. You can certainly cut this with a rotary cutter, but sometimes it's just faster to do it with scissors. And that leaves me with 1 easy corner. And I have to do that a total of 4 times so that I have all of my long pieces going 2 up and 2 down. And so I will have opposite sets like this. So this is what I'm going for. I should have 2 going up and 2 going down. Okay? from every jelly roll strip. That's the first unit. The second unit involves sewing the little pieces. So I need to sew with these two. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take, and just like I did before, I'm going to put pretty sides up. And I'm going to lay all of these down. And sometimes when you have tone on tone, it's hard to tell. And I have these little guys. These 1.5 inch squares will go in the corners. And this is batik, so it doesn't matter which way they go. But you just need to make sure that your pretty sides are touching. So I'm going to go 2 to the right like this, top right. And then I have to do 2 to the left. Kind of like I did the other ones. Just making sure that that's lined up on that edge. If you have little serrated edges like some of the pre-cuts have, you can put it towards the top, the one that you're going to cut away. And just line that up, just like that. Does anybody have any questions so far? All right, so you need 2 going up and 2 going, so you need 2 going left and 2 going right of these, and they're lined up just like that. If you have a dark color, I often use just a regular 100% washable children's colored pencil. I do this if it's going to be marked on the inside of my quilt. I certainly do not mark with this on the quilt top because it can actually leave marks depending on the fabric. So you're going to mark like this. The 2 that are going to the right are going to be flipped and sewn to the right. And then the 2 going to the left, so these are going to be sewn with the line this way. And these are going to be sewn with the line the opposite direction. So you're making mirror images of these in order to make the O's for the Ring of Fire. If you notice, I'm laying my colored pencil kind of sideways, just going along my ruler, and I'm pushing it down. Okay, so I'm going to bring this down so you can see. So there I have it. 2 going that way and 2 going the opposite. So these are going uphill, these are going downhill. And that's why I said it's important to do these in sets so that you don't get your angles confused. Now let's talk about sewing, right? In order to have accurate, because these are small, they're 1.5 inch. One of the things that I do is I run a pin across the sewing line like this. So I run a pin opposite because when my sewing machine is going this way and the feed dogs are pulling, that's going to reduce the shifting if I put tension in the opposite direction. So what I will do is I will just put a pin, and I pull that pin just when I get to that spot. Okay. And so that's the next step. So step 1 was the long ones, and this is step 2. Okay. So now I'm getting ready to go to step 3. But before I do, I'm going to stop. Does anybody have any questions about what I've covered so far? You guys good? All right. Say hello to each other if you haven't said that. Hi, Jenny. Oh, Jenny from Maine is here. Hi, Jenny. All right. So this is step 2. I'm going to pick those up. And I'm going to share step 3. So this is step 1 is these. Step 2 is these. I'm going to move these over. And then the next step involves these squares. And let me show you what happens next. So once I have my rectangles, right, and I have a pair of these right here, and once I have sewn these into the corners, then I'm going to press them, just like I did the other ones. I'm going to flip it, and I'm going to lay it down so that it lays perfectly straight. I'm going to hold that with my finger, and then I'm going to lay the iron. And I'm going to do that to all 4 of these. So as you can see, I'm just going to flip. I'm not stretching, but I am making sure that that goes to the corner. And then I'm laying my iron on there flat. And if I have sewn just a hair on the other side of that line, I get these perfectly straight rectangles that are not distorted. Okay? And so once you've done that, you're ready for the next step. And I'm going to pull my serrated scissors for this because I like that. So I'm going to roll this back and make sure you're only cutting the excess, so a 1/4 inch away. I'm going to trim that back. And that's the next step. You're going to make sure that all of your units are like this. So this is step 1, making these units. Step 2 is creating these units. And then the next step is adding your 2.5 inch squares to the tops of these. And so you're just going to smooth that in place with your fingers, trying not to stretch. I just kind of use my thumbs like that. And then I'm going to sew those for you really quick. So let me flip my camera view so you can see what I'm doing. Boop. So I'm just coming over here to my sewing machine. And I'm going to take these guys and I'm just going to sew a 1/4 inch across. And I've got my foot on here, which is a flat foot. And I've got my 1/4 inch marked on the bed of my machine. And so let me just sew these really quick so you can see. I normally sew with a 1/4 inch foot, but for this particular project, I'm using my flat foot on my sewing machine because I want to make sure that those corners are not sinking down into the teeth of my sewing machine. So grab that. Okay. So once I sew these, and I like to sew them in a little chain, then I'm ready to press them. And so this is what my units should look like. And let me flip the camera. So my 2 units now look like this, right? And if you ever see me sew, I prefer to chain piece. So for example, when I did all of these, I chain pieced. It saves thread, and for me it's just more accurate. So I always chain piece my units just because it ensures that I have all the units I need and they're going in the correct direction. So as you can see, 2 to the right, 2 to the left. So now that I have these chain pieced, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press them. And I'm going to press them towards the red. So I'm going to press these towards the red. I always set my seam. And I try not to stretch my block. So I just use my fingers to lay it down. And then I use my iron to put pressure. And I always sew with a wooden board just because it leaves very accurate flat seams. I always press to the side. I see a lot of people encouraging you to press open. I don't. I've been sewing for almost 40 years and I find that open seams can be very weak seams. And so pressing for me is critical. It makes very accurate seams. And I use a wooden board, and I tell you, you can use a regular cutting board with a tiny bit of batting, and it does a wonderful job. Okay, so now that I have these, I'm going to put my blocks together. So these are my units, the top and the bottom, and these are going to go just like this. So this unit is what we're going to sew together, right? So I have one rectangle that looks like this and one unit that looks like this, and the angles should be going the same direction. And when you sew that together, it looks like this. And yes, you see that sticking up. If you see that 1/4 inch at the top, then you have sewn this correctly. And so from every jelly roll strip, you're going to get 4 of these units that look like this. Now this is going to be a quilt of valor for me, so I may make half of them red and half of them blue because I want it to be red, white, and blue. Or I might, just might, do half of them like this where half of it is red and half of it is blue. I still haven't made up my mind. But this is what the pieces look like. Do not put your pieces together until you decide if you're going to make your circles all one color. So O from Ohio, right, Mary? Or if you want to do them in different colors. So if you want to mix and match and you're using scraps, then leave these units like this, and you're going to need 144. So if you plan on doing them all the same color, go ahead and put them together into units like this. So if you're going to do them all the same color, then you're going to put it together just like this. And you're going to put that O, which looks like an Ohio State O, you're going to sew it together. And so let me just go over here and sew both of these really quick. It won't take me but a second. Let me show you what the block looks like. If you're an Ohio State fan, you can definitely make this in your school colors. This is going to be a quilt of valor for me. And the O stands for the oath of office that soldiers take. I'm a U.S. Army veteran. And so I'm making this one for a fellow veteran that's related to my daughter-in-law. So for those of you who are going to make this for a quilt of valor, this is a great project. But you could also make this with Christmas fabric. You could do fall. You could do Easter. And so you decide what you want to do. You can make it all scrappy. This would even make a great quilt if you made it like in all monochromatic. Okay, let me just grab the second one over here and I'm going to sew it together. Always check, make sure that you have the correct sides put together. And I don't pin this for this step, I don't need to. There's nothing to match when you put these two sides together. All right, I'm almost done. Same thing I did before. I like to chain piece. I'm going to press these open, but when I press these open, I'm going to press them in opposite directions. So if you notice how this block goes together, it goes like this. So you're going to want those seams to nest. So one goes inward and one goes outward. And that's what it looks like. So like when you nest your seams, you lay those together, those seams go opposite directions and you just snuggle them together. You push them with your finger, and then you definitely want to put a pin in this one right at that intersection like this. So you're going to push that pin in. You're going to rotate that into place to make sure it's nice and snug. And then you're going to run that pin like this across that seam so that when you sew that together, it will lock together. And then when you open those seams should match perfectly right at that intersection. Let's see if I can make that happen. No pressure, right? No pressure at all. So put my smaller pin in there. Right at that intersection, and I'll be right back. Let me sew that together for you. All right. Let's see if it happened. And voila, it is a match. Yay! So this is how you're going to build the pieces. And so you're going to have these halves going like this. You're going to have the other half going like this. And like I said, If you want all 4 of these quadrants to be different colors, you most certainly could. And so this is going to be a quilt of valor because, like I said, O is an oath for office for me. When you're in the service, you pledge to defend the Constitution of the United States, and you pledge to do that in all situations. And many times service members have to put their duties sometimes before their families. And so I'm making this to honor a friend of mine. It's a family friend, and so I think that this individual will really enjoy this quilt. If you've never been a part of the Quilts of Valor, you should find your local chapter. They're always looking for quilty volunteers. And there you have it. Those are the 4 pieces that you will need. So you can sew these together. If you want to sew them vertically and then horizontally, that's fine. But either way, just make sure that these are nested. So if you notice, one goes this way, one goes that way, and that will ensure that these intersections all match. And so the places where you match is the top and the bottom, and then these middle intersections. Does anybody have any questions about this particular quilt or the quilt block? Let me tell you about finishing this quilt. So if you noticed on the website, there are extended sizes. So if you wanted to make this larger, right? If you wanted to make this larger, you would just need to increase the number of blocks that you made. And the blocks finish. So this block is 8.5 by 10.5. And then when I sew them together, they are 8 by 10. So let me show you this part here. And so that measurement is what allows you to decide how big you want it. If you want to add a border like I did with mine, see, look, I didn't pin it and look what happened. Terrible. If you want to make one that looks like mine, and let me show you what that looks like in the full view. So as you can see, I went ahead and I added a 6-inch unfinished border. So I added a 2.5 inch all the way around, and then I cut those borders 6 inches. And so then when I was done, this measured a little bit over 60 by 80, it's like 61 by 82, but you'll get a quilt that is 60 by 80. Does anybody have any questions about this project or what they need to do? It's pretty straightforward. I'm gonna have to seam rip because look what I did. I didn't pin, and now it's not perfect, and so that will drive me nuts. I like it when they look like this. So you will make your 2 halves, you'll put them together, and that is the block. If you're making this quilt, it is a 6 by 6 layout, which gives you a rectangle. And so this one is 36 blocks, the quilt behind me. So if you want to take a look, it's a nice, generous quilt. As soon as my granddaughter saw it, she called it, you know, that fruity cereal that kids love to eat. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that online, but there's a fruity cereal that has little circles. And so that's the first thing that my granddaughter said when she saw this quilt, because that's her favorite breakfast cereal. All right, friends, I hope you guys have a great Sunday, rest of your Sunday. I'm going to finish seam ripping this block because I didn't follow my own advice and I didn't pin it. So I'm going to have to seam rip it before I finish my block. But that is easy peasy. The Ring of Fire quilt, you can get it done. I got this one done in an entire day. So it took me about an hour and a half, 2 hours to cut all of the pieces. And then it took me about 6 hours to sew all of the blocks. So you can do that in one day. All right, friends, I will see you guys very soon. It is 2:30, and I hope you have a great sewing Sunday. I'm going to get busy finishing up my blocks. So mine are going to be all different reds and all different blues. And it says, could you make it to where it looked interlocked? I'm not sure what you mean, Linda, by interlocked. But you could definitely make all 4 of the quadrants different colors, for sure. All right, friends, if you have any other questions, please post them in the chat. If you are new to this channel, don't forget to like and subscribe. We appreciate it. That's how you can help us spread our channel, share it with other people. Lots of things coming up. Next year, we're doing a row/runner of the month, which means we're going to do a row quilt. And you can turn those rows into individual table runners, or you can put several of them together and make a full-size quilt. So that's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be starting in January. And we're finishing up our gnomes quilt and our Dresden. So we got a lot of stuff happening. I'm not going to start any new projects till I get this stuff done. All right, friends, I will talk to you guys later. It's been wonderful having you guys here. I appreciate it. Go out there and do wonderful things and have a super Sunday. Bye, everybody.